Hi everyone, Armoured Pants here, and I have another review for you in the German line. This is the Tier 9 tank destroyer, the Jadgtiger, and as always we have a complete guide, and we will look at the tech spec first, and we will use blitzhanger.com, which is a great tool for all blitzers. But before we get into that, one of the reasons that a lot of us play Blitz is because it has these historic tanks in it, and this is an iconic World War II tank destroyer. We look here at some images from it in action. This is on the Western Front. It was the heaviest tank in World War II and the largest armoured vehicle of World War II. Its 128mm gun made it really very effective, and there was no Allied armour that could stand up to it. I guess from the Allied side, the only plus to this was that there was so few of them actually made. If you look at it here, it literally is almost the size of a house. It was a massive piece of armament. And as we said, with that 128mm gun, really the Allied forces, Allied armour just could not stand up to it. We already did a mini review of it in its historical context when we looked at the Jadgtiger 8.8 review, and this is its bigger brother with the 128mm gun, which is what most of the Jadgtigers were fitted with during World War II. Again, we just look at some images here of this very impressive piece of German armament. This one, a captured one, I believe, in Italy. And Allied soldiers look on and expect this monster. Here's a colorized photograph, one of the rare colorized photographs of it. You can see how big it is. Again, and here is one which is on display in the US Armour Museum in Aberdeen, Maryland. One captured and proudly displayed by US Armed Forces from World War II. So, looking at it in Blitz, this is a really good tank destroyer. The 128mm gun is amazing, fantastic alpha rolls, 460 plus on your AP. And if you use gun rammer, you're going to have 6.9 second reload, which is pretty phenomenal. And you are going to be able to do a lot of damage on that. It's a DPM monster. We look at the pen here, even on the HE, you've got 65mm of pen on the HE, so load up some HE, because with light tanks and medium tanks you'll be able to pen them at the sides and back. And with that big alpha rolls coming from the HE, you're going to be able to do a lot of damage. Supercharged and refined gun I would recommend, and that increases the muzzle velocity to 1560 meters per second, which is very good for a tank destroyer. And it's significantly better, let's say, than the other Tier 9 German tank destroyer, the Waffle Tractor. So, you know, the muzzle velocities are going to allow you to snipe, to play as a classic tank destroyer, playing from the back and supporting your team from the back, from a sniping position, and farming some damage. However, the tank also has excellent traverse, and therefore it's a good brawler. And that actually plays in and allows you to develop other tactics with this tank, of which there are probably 3 different tactics you can play with this tank, and we'll discuss that when we look at the tactics section. Now, this tank has great frontal armour. Especially if you're top tier, you are going to be able to bully the enemy, and you can even go front line, and if you're top tier you will get a lot of bounces. You can also create significant relative armour angles if you move around. You can see here, looking at the front and at the sides, significant armour angles are created. And if you wiggle and jiggle the front of the tank like that when you're in a brawl, you will get additional bounces. If it had a turret, you could side scrape, because you can see you can get great angles on the sides in side scraping position, but of course without a turret that's more difficult. But you'll see that you see this in the game as well. If you can keep the armour facing the enemy and wiggle and jiggle, you will get a lot of bounces. Now the tracks are quite exposed, and also you're a big target, so your tracks can get hit. But engine accelerator is an option, particularly if you're going to play as a classic tank destroyer. And the engine accelerator will allow you to get into those classic sniping positions where you can do some damage and allow you to get there a bit faster. However, if you're going to play this tank as a support vehicle, supporting your heavies or your mediums, then I'd run 2 repair kits, because the sides and the back are vulnerable to HE, and you're playing Tier 9, so therefore you're going to be up against the biggest guns in the game, and you can be one-shotted by some of the really big guys like a Death Star or the Jagdpanzer, E100, T30, Waffle Tractor. They're all going to do a lot of damage to you at HE, and you don't want to get stuck out in the open. If we look here again at the armor profile front on, as I said, if you're top tier, you can be a front on bully. If you're up tiered, you will obviously be able to be penned a bit more easily by those bigger guns in tier 10. Now in terms of tactics, as I said, there's probably 3 options open. You can play this as a classic tank destroyer, so going into those sniping positions at the back of the map, supporting your team from there, sniping from behind your allies, and the rate of fire allows you to farm damage. Secondly, the tank does 38 kilometers an hour, so that allows you to move and support your heavies. You can move up behind them or with them and support their guns, and with your rate of fire, this is a very good tactic too. And if you're a more experienced player or want something a bit different, you can be a medium support vehicle or even a heavy medium. You can play that role. You can move with your medium tanks and support them. And as we've discussed in other tank destroyer guides, particularly with the German line, when you play like that, you take the enemy by surprise. They're not expecting you to turn up on a flank supporting your light and medium tanks. Now at 38 kilometers an hour, you're going to fall slightly behind, but that's good. That allows the mediums and lights to spot up the enemy. You roll up in behind them, put your armor front on, and you will be able to do a lot of damage. Now in this game, I do something quite unusual. This is Desert Sands, there's a supremacy game. I do something pretty unusual here. I check the setup, trying to decide what to do, where to go. Normally you would go and support the heavies at C, but I've looked at the setup and I believe that we're going to get flanked. So therefore I decide to go to A, and I'm going to go on my own. I'm asking for help, but nobody's going to come with me. I even tell my team we're going to get flanked, but nobody's going to come with me, so I go on my own. Now, going out into the desert in a non-turreted tank destroyer like this may seem a bit insane, but I have complete confidence in this tank. Its rate of fire is effectively like having 2 guns with you to an extent, and you'll see there's a monster brawl coming up, 2v1, where I take on the T-54 and I take on JadgPanther II as well. Now, if you're wondering what the JadgPanther II is doing there, I think maybe the guy watched my video where I say you can play the JadgPanther II as a medium, because he does play a medium tank role. And you'll see him coming into play in a second. Now, what I do here in the T-54 is I am just giving him the front of my tank, and I dropped adrenaline, and I am using my fantastic rate of fire and my big alpha rolls to really do a lot of damage on him. And I just cleared him off like in a matter of, just seconds. And you'll see here, this is a really good example of how this tank can brawl. A little bit of ram damage on him there. And now I'm just facing up to him. He's getting those angles that we saw when we looked at the tech spec. There's nothing really he can do. He's trying to look for a weak spot. You can see him looking for a weak spot. He doesn't want to fire. He doesn't want to waste a shot. Bam! He gets hit again. Massive alpha roll. And now I'm already almost reloaded again with the dropping the adrenaline. Coming in again. Another hit him again. Bam! And now he's just one shot from me. And you just see how good this tank is. The damage I sustained there is from the JadgPanther II, which came in behind me. Bam, I've cleared him off, and now I'm showing the front of my tank to the JadgPanther, giving him a few difficult angles to look at. But the JadgPanther does have a 128mm gun like me, really big gun on a tier 8, so he's going to be able to pen me as well. But I know I have a better reload than him, so even going to take a bit of damage, I am actually able to clear him off too. So there you go. Now let's look at we'll just have a look at this again and see that just how effective this tank is. And as I said, with the T-54 for example, if we're in a big open space, he probably wouldn't be able to get in behind me, but because we're in that tight space, we're hemmed in by the sand dunes, he couldn't get around in behind me. He's trying to find an angle to shoot, and he just cannot clear any shots on me. And he just gets pummeled by the gun and this rate of fire. And this is just, let's look at the whole thing again, speed it up, and we just see just how good this tank is in these situations. A 2v1 you would expect, especially against a tier 9 medium tank, which is a very, very good tank, the T-54, and a big gun on the JadgPanther II. These guys would have expected to win that brawl quite easily. Instead they get cleared off, and I've done a great job for my team. So I've stopped the flanking maneuver, allowing T-54 and the JadgPanther to come up behind us. I've removed 2 reds from the game, and I have now capped A. So that is pretty good job, well done, and a really good job for my team. Also, the fact that I have taken on 2 tanks myself means that my allies on the other side have 1 less gun to deal with, so they have a 6v5 on the other side. Now, I did take a bit of punishment there, of course. I lost about 1500, almost 1500 hit points, but I think that's a fairly decent exchange, clearing off a massive gun of the JadgPanther II, plus their medium tier 9 tank, the T-54. So I think that's a pretty decent exchange and a pretty good job done for my team. Now I'm pushing on. As you can see, the tank is not that fast. It struggles a bit also on non-flat terrain, but it's not as slow as many people think. It is relatively agile for something so big. Putting around in there just to see if there's a TD if I get spotted. There isn't. Now I know it's safe for me to move in behind the reds, and I'm going to use this gun again to see what damage I can farm. Now I think that piece of play just illustrates what I was talking about this tank and how versatile it is and the different tactics that can be played. I thought I might be able to hit the hatch on the Jadgtiger there, but switch back to AP now, put one in on the Tiger II. Now I'm going to drop adrenaline, see how much damage I can do. They're going to try to push up on me here, but then he turns, the AMX turns his back on gameplay, and then he gets smashed in the back. See that bounce there, bounce off the IS. That's what I mean about this armor. And then just look at this shot, beautiful shot, right into the drive wheel of the IS, clear him off. And that's just how good this gun is. That's the muzzle velocity in action there. Bam, straight through the drive wheel, game over for the IS. Another kill for me. And that's really is just how good this gun is. It's just a fantastic gun, very reliable, great reload, and fantastic alpha rolls as well. That was just a great example, I think, this game, great example of really how effective this tank can be. As I said, unusual tactics, I wouldn't recommend it all the time. I wouldn't recommend it for everybody. But I think, you know, you can play this as a classic TD. You can, so as I said, there's 3 options. Play as a classic TD, sit behind and farm damage with that gun. You can really do that. You can go and support your heavies because you can move with them, or you can do what I did there, play as a heavy medium tank, or if there are other medium tanks in your team, go and support them. Go and support them is far less risky than going off on your own. But just in that game, just when I looked at the setup, I knew we were going to get flanked, and I knew I had to do something. Nobody else came with me, so I didn't really have a choice but to do it myself. But I had really a lot of confidence in the tank that it was going to be able to deliver, and I would be able to win that brawl. I would prefer not to have a 2v1, but you know, you saw how effective the tank was and how I was able to clear off those 2 reds. Now let's have a recap of the key points about this tank. So it's a super tank destroyer, super German tank destroyer. The frontal armor is great, and as we said, it's an iconic tank that we get a chance to look at here in Blitz. The 128mm gun is a DPM monster, less than 7-second reload, and that gets even better when you drop adrenaline. The tank is not fast, but as you saw, it's not as slow as you might think, and it's certainly not as slow as many of the enemy think, and therefore you can surprise them. It's excellent as a traditional tank destroyer, for sure. You can be a damage farmer, and you can sit at the back of the map and just pummel the enemy. You supercharge and refine gun, especially if you're going to do this, because you need to maximize the muzzle velocity if you're firing over long distances. Use enhanced armor, get those bounces. As you saw, front on and angling up on the tank, you can create a lot of relative armor and get some bounces. Move the front of the tank to enhance this. Don't just sit there and keep it flat on and let the enemy have easy shots. Move it around, wiggle, get those really high numbers that we saw in the tech spec going. Engine accelerator is an option, particularly if you're going to use the traditional tank destroyer role, but it's not essential. And if you're going front line or with meds, I'd recommend 2 repair kits. Load up HE for light tanks because you can pen them with that gun, and have fun and mix it up. You know, maybe play as a TD for a while, then when you get comfortable with it, then maybe move with support your heavies, or maybe move and support your meds and really take the reds by surprise. Because I can tell you in that game, there was no way that T-54 or that JadgPanther II were expecting me to show up there on my own. and yet it did, and I think it really took them by surprise, and they were not expecting that, and they certainly weren't expecting to lose that brawl. Now the Jagdgaroo is next. It's a completely different playstyle, the JadgPanther II, but there is a guide on channel for that. See how to play that monster. And I guess all that remains for me to say is thanks for watching. Cheers, Mush, and pants off.